Okay, we're live. We're both live on Facebook and YouTube. And I should throw the Facebook chat in there. I will grab that right now and copy. And then I will go ahead and put that over into a comment here. So you can watch it on YouTube. Subscribe, get messages, get notifications. All right. So we're going to have that there. So today we're going to talk about, look at one screen over here at in case somebody chats. I can see all these chats. I have chat in Facebook, chat in YouTube. You can chat in either place. It's helpful if you put a comment in there. All right, today we're going to talk about song files, .song files. This whacks people out in the beginning, because especially if they come from one of the simple DAWs like Twisted Wave or something where there is no container file, and and people get this confused. They try to import WAV files or open a WAV file, and they can't do it, and they're frustrated by that at first. But it's easy. So just when you see it, you'll go, well, it makes sense. And it's what allows all this non-destructive, and it's what allows this program to be easy to use, to have all the nice colors and formatting and good stuff without any problem, because it has this .song file format. And you'll see that format in a lot of places, but it is a container file. So imagine if you're a handyman or you're a handywoman, or in our kitchen, we have this little, in our drawer, we have something that divides things into different forks and knives and spoons. Almost everybody has this little organizer in your kitchen drawer. Well, you can pull that out, and that you can put lots of different things in there, and you might have more forks than I do, or it doesn't really matter. This is a little container that keeps things organized, and that's what your .song file is. It does look a little bit like this. This is for if someone's a handy type person and they're out doing repairs. This is a little cart, and it allows you to stack together different toolboxes, and in these toolboxes are different tools. You can think of these as tracks or events, and you can stack them on top of each other, and they're contained in each other. And this is the same kind of concept that's occurring with a .song file. So that means within a .song file, there are things like there's your audio, there are the effects for mastering, and there's the sizes and colors and track heights and volume levels, and a bunch of other stuff is stored in there. So Studio One can keep track. What's the macro toolbar that's being used on this one? A lot of details related, but the .song file is not your audio. So that's why sometimes if somebody new is going to bring and send a friend of theirs the .song file, and then their friend goes, I can't do anything with that. And that's because behind the scenes, the .song file is not your audio and doesn't even contain your audio. So we'll start that at the beginning. I'll show you how that works. And when you understand just some basics about it, it makes this pretty darn easy, okay? It definitely makes this easy. So let me go ahead and refresh something here. Let's see how we can do that. Reload. Yeah, we'll reload that one. All right. And over here, we're going to just see if there's some comments here. All right, I do see it. Thank you, Charles. Really helpful, really helpful, really helpful. All right, appreciate that. So what is the .song file? Well, it's the file format that when you go over here and you choose +sign and you create something new here, and I'm going to say understanding .song files, understanding song files. Okay, and that's just the extension that they used. It really wouldn't matter. They could have chosen anything. They could have called it a .s1 file. I don't know why they didn't do that, but they didn't. It's something that was thought about 10, 12 plus years ago. And like a lot of things in life, sometimes once it gets defined, that's what you keep for the rest of your life. But so we're going to create something, and we're going to take our template, and we're going to create a file. And then what happens is we have a file. Now, what it looks like is that when we record audio here, I'm recording some audio. It's super fantastic. Well, almost. And when I do that, then it looks like I have audio in my song file. Okay? Understanding songs. But I actually don't. This audio is stored in the background. And what I'm going to do is show you how you can even go and find under the song menu, there's something called Show Media Folder in Explorer. Show Media Folder in Explorer. And when you do that, then what happens is Well, I gotta check something here. Yeah. Oh, cool. All right. I noticed one of my meters wasn't working. I thought, hey, nobody's hearing me, but I think they're hearing me. Somebody would have yelled and said, hey, where is that? Where is it? And yeah, it's working fine. So here's what happens. Look at this. I just went to a folder, and I'll show you how to find this folder, and there's some other things to do with it. But there is a folder because Studio One is super organized. Let me show you the whole superstructure. Now watch this. This is pretty wild. Once we save a file, and by the way, I'm going to have a session on autosaves versus saves. You need to really have those straight in your head. Save yourself some grief. But here's what happens. I did not create a folder, but look at this thing. Look at what happened here. Okay. Now I got to delete this one because this was one that I did earlier. I was practicing this one time just to make sure I got it right. So I'm gonna throw that one in the trash. All right. Understanding song files. It actually, because I already had it there, it created a number 2. Normally it would not have that number 2, but see in here, you can see what it did because I had one, because I tried this earlier today to make sure I remembered some details. But here's what happened. This is weird at first. It's actually amazingly organized. I did not create a folder called Understanding Song Files. All right. What I did was I created when I was here and I said this, it asked me for the name. And I created one called Understanding Song Files. And what it did was in the background, it says, I'm going to be super organized and I'm going to give him what he asked for. I'm going to give you what you asked for. It wouldn't put the number 2 in your case if you didn't already have one. I had one. So it says, all right, I'm not going to overwrite anything. One of the things Studio One is really, really, really good about that nobody appreciates is that it just doesn't overwrite things. It basically says, hey, if Don's going to be an idiot and he's going to delete stuff, I'm going to let him delete it himself. That way, if something were to go wrong, he deleted it, not my fault, all right? And that's what's happening here. It doesn't delete things. So I already had a folder with that name. It created a secondary one, gave it an incremental number. That way, I don't have to think about it. So it also created a media folder and a cache folder, which is kind of, what? Why did it do that? Well, it did that because it needs these for its own internal use. I have people that have used Studio One for 3 years, 5 years, and don't know what these folders are in the background. And they don't need to know. Now, it's nice to know. It's like driving your car. You don't need to know what tires are on your car. It's helpful to know what type of gas it needs or what type, if you plug it in, where to plug it in. There's a lot of things it's nice to know about your car that when you know them, it just makes it easier, more comfortable. Where do you adjust the seats? Some steering wheels adjust. Some people don't even know if they haven't had a certain car, they don't know you can adjust the steering wheel up or down. Yeah, it's nice to know that, but it's not mandatory. It's helpful. And that's the same thing here. In the background, I just created a file and it created a folder and then it created folders within the folders. So those are a team. And if I go back up one level, this was the folder that it just created for me. And if I take that and I copy it or I drag it over to any place else or put it on a thumb drive and take it to another machine, as long as I have that folder, which is above my song file right there, then everything works, because what happens is this file knows where everything is relative to it. That's kind of like saying, hey, I know that the milk is in the refrigerator. I don't really know where the milk is kept. And if there's only one refrigerator in the house and you want something that's the ice cream, so the freezer, if they have one freezer, you know, hey, the ice cream's in the freezer. Okay. And that's kind of how it is here, where you don't have to know where everything is, but once you know where the .song file is or where the media folder is, then you can find everything else because they're all in a logical place related to each other. I don't want to get in the weeds about that, but watch this. When I recorded this beautiful little piece of audio here, behind the scenes, it's sitting right in the media folder. Okay, now there it is. And then it does this bizarre thing. It's set it up for the next time I record. If I turn this off, by the way, you'll see one of them will go away. If I have whenever you're armed, it has an extra blank file sitting there. And that's actually what it records in. If I press record right now, it starts in number 2, records there. And as soon as I'm done, I'll just show you here. Almost. And when I do that, then it looks like, and here it's going to it's recording in number 2, and the second I stop, it'll create number 3, and you'll see that. And now it's just ready and waiting. And so behind the scenes, it's doing something really smart, and that's saying, okay, Don still got this armed, Bill still has this armed, Sandy has this armed, whatever, whoever you are, if your track is armed, there's one little baby file sitting there in the background waiting to be recorded on. So this whole thing is a folder structure, and the .song file is within at a certain location. And if you take the whole team, you can move them to any other machine. And so it's easy. But what happens is every once in a while, I'll get somebody new and they say, open. And they're expecting to be able to open a WAV file, for example. You can't do it. Well, you can do it, but I mean, you can get a WAV file in here, but a WAV is not it's not a file format for Studio One. What you do for a WAV is you have any existing file, and then you can take a WAV. I could take these here, and I can drag them in, and I can drop them. If I grab one here, I can drag it, and I can drop it right in any place I want. There's that dragged right in. Okay, so that's easy to do. That's something that's just a no-brainer. You drag it in. So you can drag in MP3s, WAV files, AAC, video files. There's a whole bunch. If you have the Pro version, there's a whole bunch of things you can do, and you just drag them in. Or you can use the import. It's under, what is it? I don't even do this. Where is it? It's under Song, import file. I do that so rarely that I just don't even remember where it is, but it's under Song, import file. That will allow you to bring in all these things, WAV files, AIFF, a whole bunch of things, FLAC files, QuickTime files, all sorts of stuff is just available here that you could open right into Studio One. And then what it's going to do is it's going to put it at the intersection. So if I imported a WAV file, it'll put it at the intersection of the cursor and the active track. And I could import MP3s and WAVs and all that stuff right in here, but it's going into a container. You don't keep all your milk sitting on the counter either. You put your milk in the refrigerator. You put your ice cream in the freezer. Why? Because there are some advantages to doing that. I mean, you know, milk does better in a container, and then that container goes in something cold. Could you have containers that all have their own cold? Sure. But they're smart the way they do this. And then there's this thing behind the scenes that nobody knows about, but I'm going to talk about it in another session. There is a way to quickly and easily send the complete folder structure to somebody else or to another machine. There's something that most people don't know about, and I'll go over it here in the next few sessions or so, about moving files between machines or between locations quickly and easily. And it's pretty cool. So you can always do it the manual way. You can just go in here, and as long as you find the folder here, as long as I copy this whole folder and move it someplace else, it will work on this machine. It'll work on another machine. It'll work on, I could change this to another drive or another location or a cloud drive or something like that. So I can, as long as I understand that this folder is a team that contains a .song file. Oh, and look at this, autosaves are starting to be saved. Studio One is also creating autosaves, and if I sit here long enough, that autosave file is going to get moved. It's going to create a new folder here pretty soon called History, and it'll drop that autosave into the History folder once I get to a certain point. So Studio One is just keeping itself organized, and so it creates a folder structure. By the way, you'll notice if there's no stems folder here. There's no mixdown folder. What it does, let me move this over to the side, just to give you an idea, it doesn't add clutter. A lot of people will be real happy about this, but watch this sitting right here. I go over here and I mark and I export to a stems folder here. Now, when I export that, then I choose OK. And now what's going to happen is right here in the same place that we were, I now have a stems folder because I did something that caused it to need, well, it doesn't need it. It wants to be organized. So if I just take the defaults, it created a folder for me and it is going to keep itself organized. And I'm sure many of you anybody who's done a mixdown, then you know that if I go ahead and I just do a mix down here, and I'm going to take a WAV file and create a WAV file and an MP3 at once. And when I do that, It just created 2 files. And what you'll notice is when I go back to that folder structure here, you are going to get, you probably could guess already, we go up 1 level and we're going to see that now we have a mixdown folder. So now we have a stems folder, a mixdown, because we did something that needed it. So at first, Studio One starts off with the least number of folders that it needs to keep itself organized. Then over time, it will add more as it needs them to keep things organized in something that makes sense. Now, they didn't all make sense to me at first because I had never thought about it. Some people put everything on their desktop. Not ideal, but you could do it. Instead, Studio One says, hey, I'm going to need a bunch of files, a bunch of WAV files, and when we export, I'll create them if they don't do anything else. It's got a folder, the cache folder here, that's all for its own internal use, so it can be faster about certain things. So it puts some things on the drive, and it just has them there waiting. So a .song file is a container. It's like your refrigerator. It's like a toolbox that we talked about earlier that I had this little graphic on. It's like this thing here where these are events and these are tracks, and they all fit inside this one little thing that all goes on this one cart. You could think of the cart as the .song file, and it holds all these other things, and each one within them, you could have music, you can have instruments, you can have all sorts of 100 other things, the colors, the sizes. All those details are stored in the little boxes, and each box is organized, and then the organized box goes within another box. They all stack together. You can take them other places. You can open them up independently. There's all sorts of things you can do with an organizational system, and it is absolutely brilliant. Okay, now let me look and see if there's any questions here from somebody that I can help with. Let me go ahead and pop this out, and I'm going to go ahead and reload that one. Make sure there's anything there. Okay. I just have to check this in 2 spots. All right. Cool. All right. So now next time you're trying to open a WAV file, just remember, we really don't open the WAV file. All we do is we import it, which means we drag her in. And once you drag it in, you can drag in a WAV file, drag in an MP3 file. You can drag in any audio file, and you can just set it wherever you want it. You can have it go to current tracks. You can have it go to another track. If you don't want it on the existing track, you can throw it down here, and Studio One will make you a track automatically, so you don't have to think about it. You drag those in, it works. It's a container file. And then one of the things that will happen at some point, I think, what do I have my, by the way, all of you have this, Studio One options, general. Oh, what is it? It's under, I think it's under locations. My autosave is every 5 minutes. At some point here, this is going to go and it's going to create another, I have to wait another probably minute or so, and it would create another folder called history. And all the autosaves are going to be stored in the history. And I'm going to be going over saves and autosaves in another session here. If people understood, they can, Studio One has all these safety things, belts and suspenders and airbags and seat belts, and it's doing a bunch of things in the background that nobody cares about until they have a little accident or they're missing something. Then they're really happy. Oh, it's got my back. Okay. So, all right. If anyone has any questions, be sure to ask about them in the group. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, be sure to join the Studio One Facebook group. If you're on, there it just happened. So I just saw it out of the corner of my eye. There's now a history folder. And what's happening here is that the history folder contains one of the autosave files. And that just, does it need to have a history folder? No, it could have dumped them all in the same thing. But by putting them in the history folder, this way it can have as many as it wants in there. And they're out of your way. You and I don't have to see them. And while it's not obvious, there's a place over here called Restore Version. And I could see there is that autosave that ended up in the history folder. Okay. Now there's another one that's pending, and Studio One is so smart. They go ahead and they make the file before they need it so that they're sure they can write to it, but it's sitting right there. And what would happen is over time I'd end up with a whole bunch of autosaves there. When there's a problem, when my machine crashes, when something goes wrong, when I make a mistake, I can go back to one of these other versions. Now hopefully I'm saving as well, but nonetheless, if I'm not saving, it is keeping autosaves for me, but save anyway. I've got a whole session I'll do on that. All right. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. If you're watching this live, not watching it live, I hope you're having a fantastic day or night, depending on where in the world you are. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. That always really helps. Be sure to like this. Be sure to add comments. Man, you cannot believe how much help it is when you add comments after the video is done. Get this out to more people. Appreciate you being here. Ask questions in the group.